before we get into everything proper, I was looking to see if there was some specific connection between America's bicentennial and Jimmy Buffett, like whether that moved him in some direction or, he ended up at a concert where he met, I don't know, some asshole that was like, hey, you should do a shitty album about this stuff. I couldn't find anything like that, right? What I did find, though, when I looked up, Jimmy Buffett bicentennial, is that Jimmy covered This Land Is Your Land for the July 4th, 2021 PBS Capitol concert series. So let me just set the scene for you in this video that is up on the official YouTube channel of the PBS concert series.
Okay.
It's an old Jimmy. It's 2021. He's wearing a blue novelty Hawaiian shirt with lighthouses and stars and yachts and what looked to me to be like fishing lures on them. So he's got that shirt on. He's wearing khaki shorts. He has no shoes on.
Yeah.
He's standing in front of what I presume is his house's pool with the ocean in the background. There are two palm trees that are like strangely grown in the exact position as on the Margaritaville brand logo, which makes me think those are the exact trees from the logo. He's flanked by two accompanists. One of them is future coral reefer Robert Greenidge, and we will talk about him a lot, I'm sure, in your segment, because he's the steel drum player, and Michael Utley. Yeah. Now, Jimmy is holding an electric blue electric instrument. Would you like to guess what that instrument is?
I don't like that you said electric instrument and not just guitar. It makes me very nervous for what it is.
It is an electric ukulele.
That was going to be my next guess. I was like, it's not going to be a banjo. It's probably going to be a ukulele.
So he's accompanied by Greenidge on steel drums. But then the strange thing is that Michael Utley is standing in front of a keyboard, and he does not use that keyboard the entire song. He's playing the melodica.
Okay.
And then midway through the song, remember, this is Woody Guthrie's This Land Is Your Land.
This is your land, yeah.
He goes, play it, Bobby, and there is a steel drum solo. Like, I'm not the type of guy, like, to revere music as some untouchable and sacred thing, but I think there are, like, a select few songs that are so quintessentially, like, in patriotic's not the right word, but, like, in a really real sense, they actually hold true to the founding tenets and most virtuous principles of, like, the best parts of human existence, right? And This Land Is Your Land is one of those songs, right?
This is,
like,
we're going to get into this on this album. I feel like this album is where like Jimmy tips over an edge with like the exotica instrumentation, where it's like spoilers, listeners, for later in this episode. I think even Jimmy on the last album would have had the good sense not to put exotica instrumentation on In the Shelter.
So I do think this is all summed up by the very first comment that was left on that YouTube video, and I have to give a shout out to YouTube commenter user Toybox, because he wrote Guthrie would roll over in his fucking grave.
It seems like it. How
about we
play that intro?
I think this is a very apt cold open for this episode.
I think so.
Okay.
Wasting away again, away again. Wasting away again, away again. Wasting away again, and Margaritaville. It's my own damn fault.
Hey everybody, welcome to Dischoreography, Wasting Away 2026. I'm Tom.
I'm Kyle. We are talking about Jimmy Buffett's like landmark album today, 1977's Changes in Latitude, Changes in Attitude. That's,
folks,
I cannot believe we're here. Just to give everyone like an understanding of like the recording timeline of this, it's still January for us.
It's still January.
I mean, when you get this, it's going to be like, what, like mid-March? Early March?
Something like that.
It's like you have a lot to go. You have a lot to go on the journey of Jimmy Buffett. We have even more to go.
We aren't scheduled to finish recording this until like late October.
Or October, yeah.
Like that's 10 more months of Jimmy, and we're already at Changes in Latitudes. I'm very nervous about this. I just want to say before we get into it, a spoiler for my opinion on the album as a whole. On an earlier episode of this podcast, I said that if there was a gun to my head and somebody told me to name Jimmy's best album, I would have named this one, Changes in Latitudes, Changes in Attitudes. And I think that in that fictional scenario, our hypothetical music opinion gunmen would have fired. because that's not correct. It's not a correct opinion in the slightest. That's really all I got to say. What do we have for what happens in Jimmy's life between this album and the previous one, Havana Daydream, and to make it like this? I think like one of the big ones is that he ends his relationship with producer Don Gant.
I will go. I have a whole story in the context section for that, but I think before we get into the context here, Tom, what have you been listening to lately that is not Jimmy Buffett? Hopefully.
Well, I did. This is, listeners, it's going to become relevant for my listen to this podcast. I spent a lot of the week in the hospital with my partner who had to go in for emergency surgery. During a moment when she was awake, she put on her own music, and I listened to that for a little bit. And what she wanted to listen to was the mid-2000s album by David Byrne and Fatboy Slim, Here Lies Love. Now, Kyle, are you familiar with this album?
They did a collaboration?
Oh, Kyle, you don't even know. So Here Lies Love is not just a collaboration between David Byrne of the Talking Heads and Fatboy Slim. Here Lies Love is a concept album that was later turned into a musical written by David Byrne of the Talking Heads and Fatboy Slim about the life of Imelda Marcos.
Okay. Imelda Marcos was definitely still alive by then, right?
She's still alive now. It's this kind of like fascinating album where I guess that like at some point David Byrne had seen some documentary with her where she had said that like she wants on her headstone just the words "Here Lies Love." I was like, that's a very poetic notion for Imelda Marcos. And when I'd listened to this album several times before, and when I first listened to it, my thought was like, that must be like some sort of weird, insane hagiography, right? Like, that's a really weird album to be writing about Imelda Marcos.
Yeah.
Or like, it must be overly sympathetic. And the thing about it is that like, I think that album is much better because like, I think it is kind of sympathetic at times to Imelda Marcos, but it's sympathetic in the way that when she starts to make her decisions as a part of the Marcos regime, you know, as she starts to be an actor in that regime, because she is an actor in that regime who had like a lot of influence over their politics, it becomes much more critical of her. Right. Like, this is a person who had an interesting and kind of hard life, and she makes some decisions to make other people's lives harder. You know, one of the big major characters, probably the only really heroic character in the thing, is Ninoy Aquino, which is a good heroic character for that story. But yeah, it's I highly recommend it. Kind of an insane thing for them to have made, but I really like it. I really like it. I recommend it heartily.
Yeah, I didn't listen to anything that like that far off the mark, really.
What have you been listening to, Kyle?
Well, so, I mean, see, here's the thing. I have quite an interesting I had quite an interesting week with this album, in that it's definitely the album that I've not enjoyed listening to the most since probably High Cumberland Jubilee.
Even more than Rancho Deluxe.
Oh, right, there's Rancho Deluxe. See, again, ain't he a genius award for that entire album, except some Gothic Ranch accent. But I mean, the other thing is that, like, so Rancho Deluxe, High Cumberland Jubilee, I really only listened through the albums once each. I listened to this album like 4 times just to be like, all of my unadulterated rage about some of these songs are completely in the right, correct? And they are. But I also ended up listening to, in my free time, one of the songs, like, a lot, because I actually really like it. And we'll get to that one when it comes time for it.
So it sounds like to reduce things, you've been listening to Jimmy this week.
Yes, but I haven't only been listening to Jimmy. I listened to quite a bit of Joe Eli. Joe Eli's, you know, he's out of the progressive country scene out of Austin at this time, and he had just released his debut album in 1977. You know, I had mentioned I like listening to other albums from the time to get a sense of the musical zeitgeist. So I was listening to that, and I think it's a really enjoyable country album with a little bit of blues mixed in. It's got and I don't think it's a song he wrote, but I don't remember who wrote it. It's a really great song about heartbreak that takes from the old border ballad Spanish is the Loving Tongue, but the song is She Never Spoke Spanish to Me. That's the punchline there for Heartbreak. Wow. It's a really good song. I want to shout that one out specifically.
It sounds pretty enjoyable, to be honest.
Oh, it's great. Like, if we could do a Joe Eli podcast, it'd be much less torturous. Okay, I guess it's time to get into context.
Yeah, I think so.
So, here's a lot. Here we are in 1976. Havana Daydreamin' comes out in January 1976. And right after that, he starts the 1976 Pink Crustacean Tour. So it's the first time he names one of his tours. It's the first time that's named after an album that's not the most recent or the upcoming album that he's trying to promote, which I think is kind of strange that he chose that. There is a Havana Daydreamin' Tour. It happens in 1997.
Well, that's a little later.
Yeah, it's not even an anniversary date either, because that'd have been 96, but he had an album in 96. So I'll be keeping an eye on the tour names because they may represent his level of kitsch outside of when he's promoting albums, because they're not always just named after albums. For instance, in 1978, his tour is not the Son of a Sailor tour. He names it after, he calls it the Cheeseburger in Paradise tour, so I think is absolute bullshit. Yeah.
I'd say
so 76, he only plays 68 shows, so it's roughly equal with the 73 shows he played in 75. It's probably a more grueling experience because he takes an entire month off to record this album that we're talking about today. He didn't take that much time to record Havana Daydream in 75.
Which is wild because he recorded more songs for Havana Daydream that they ended up cutting.
Yeah, he or I think it was like interspersed over the year, maybe a little more. But he takes off the entire month of November to record this album. So in the touring band, Phil Fajardo is replaced on drums by Michael Gardner. So we've already got our first change up in the lineup of the Coral Reefers. So the producer for Changes in Latitude, Changes in Attitude was Norbert Putnam. He was a big-time studio musician, I think mostly as a bassist, first at Muscle Shoals and then up in Nashville. And so he did an interview a number of years ago where he explained his connection to Jimmy, and he said that he met Jimmy in Nashville, and there's crazy shit here that I'm going to say. He used to hang, this is Norbert talking now. He used to hang around Quad a lot. That's Quadraphonic Sound in Nashville. Yeah. Me and David, I don't remember who David is, when I took this, had a sort of open bar policy. Anyone could come into the studio and drink for free as long as they didn't bother the clients. And on any given night, you'd have people like Guy Clark and Mickey Newbury and Jerry Jeff Walker hanging out there drinking. Jimmy was writing songs and also doing interviews with artists for some magazine he wrote for. He was one of the guys in the hall when I needed a bunch of vocalists to make the chorus real big on the night they drove Old Dixie down for Joan Baez. So he was one of about 20 drunks I dragged in there to make the chorus sound real big. So Jimmy Buffett is on the night they drove Old Dixie down.
Holy moly. Okay.
That's fucking wild. It's like learning that Bob Dylan and Allen Ginsberg were in the chorus on Leonard Cohen's Don't Go Home With Your Heart On.
Starry?
Yeah, oh yeah, it's great. That's also 1977 as well, actually. Death of a Ladies Man, Leonard Cohen. Shout out to that. I think it's his most controversial album, but I love it.
Just pulling random people into the studio, I guess. Jeez.
Well, that's what Phil Spector produced that one. So he was, holding people at gunpoint in the studio, probably. Anyway, so Putnam said that the genesis of the album was Jimmy coming to him and saying that he wanted to make a concept album of songs about life by the beach. And we're going to get into some of the implications of this later, some of the song choices.
Yeah. So some of the song choices are insane.
Here's Norbert talking again. He said he wanted to do something more progressive, and he wanted me to do it with him. And he wanted to use his band, the Coral Reefers. I thought, this is tragic. I had just been through this with the new writers of the Purple Stage. A bunch of coked-out musicians behind Jimmy singing songs about his grandfather in the ocean. So he's not into it at first. And he's
clearly just imagining the entire album is going to be about the captain and the kid.
Yeah. So I went to see him at the Exit In Club. Now, we know when Jimmy played the Exit In Club. That was January 26, 1976. So Jimmy spends like a whole 10 months getting everything ready 9 months getting everything ready to record this album. after he initially has this idea for the concept album. And I told Jimmy, look, if you want to make records about the ocean, you have to get next to the ocean. So he had done this for Dan Fogelberg a few years before when he was like, Dan, you're singing about the mountains. Let's get you out to Colorado and have you record at Caribou Ranch, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is how Jimmy ends up moving from recording in Nashville to Criteria Studios in Miami. If you remember, a number of Coral Reefers got their like big start as studio musicians in Criteria down in Miami.
Yeah.
Sammy Creason and such. And I think Sammy Creason might show up either on this album or the next album, which is recorded at Criteria again.
As I recall, he doesn't show up on this album. I think it's Philip Fajardo and the other fellow on drums in this one.
Philip Fajardo, no. Michael Gardner, and then of course,
maybe Creason then.
Norbert Putnam. He's like, well, after the shambles with New Riders of the Purple Stage, he wanted to bring in ringers from the start, like studio musicians he trusted. So he brought in Kenneth Downwind Buttry, who's credited as Kenneth Barfulo Buttry on drums for a few songs. And he also said Teddy Irwin from New York on guitar, although he's not credited at all on this album. So I don't know if his parts were cut or whether Norbert's just remembering wrong there. Some of the songs from Changes in Latitude, Changes in Attitude start to appear on his set list starting in July of 1976. This is an interesting gig Jimmy does. July 9th, 1976, Jimmy played a gig aboard a yacht called the Tom Sawyer with a couple of other acts. And
Jesus Christ.
Just getting ahead of everybody. He's playing rock. It's on a yacht. It's not yacht rock. It is very much not yacht rock. Don't think it's yacht rock. It's not yacht rock. It was also an expensive fucking gig. You know, he's playing for the bourgeoisie here. Tickets for the 6-hour concert cruise went for $75 per person. Adjusted for inflation, $427 today. Or a couple's ticket for $125, which is $712 today.
Good Lord.
So, on this concert cruise, this is where Jimmy debuted a song that ended up on his album, which was Jonathan Bayham's Lovely Cruise. 4 months before he recorded it for Changes in Latitude, Changes in Attitude. Margaritaville was played as early as July 18th, 1976, and Banana Republic's, I think, was debuted when he played it on Austin City Limits, broadcast July 26th, 1976. Funnily enough, Steve Goodman ends up on Austin City Limits in 1978, and he plays his version of Banana Republic's.
That is interesting.
So yeah, Jimmy takes all of November off to record the album at Criteria in Miami. It's partly recorded at Quadraphonic Sound in Nashville, and if I had to guess, it's that the string arrangements were recorded and overdubbed there, and everything else was Miami. Just based on everything else I read about, you know, how the album came to be and what Putnam was saying about, you know, recording by the sea, and just the fact that I think Jimmy would be more than happy to record in Miami rather than Nashville, because we know he doesn't like Nashville. He's been very open about that in songs.
Also, it's closer to home.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk changes in the Coral Reefer Band on the album. So Roger Bartlett is out on lead guitar. He only played...
Really quick, I actually wanted to ask regarding the context. Do you know anything about like why Jimmy's relationship with Don Gant ended in between this album and the previous one? I have a theory.
I don't have any information on that. What's your theory?
Here's my... We know that like Jimmy wants to do this concept album on the beach, but we also know that this is not the first time Jimmy's wanted to do that, because he wanted to do that on A1A as well. So he's wanted to do that for a couple of albums now. And it seems to me like Don Gant might have been like a very strong force in preventing him from doing this concept album.
Yeah.
About just being about like beach time, like
yeah. Well, I mean, like, what we know is that Jimmy went to Norbert Putnam and asked him to produce the album. So very clearly, he wanted a different producer.
He wanted a different producer, and also specifically, he wanted a different producer for this album. I think that might be what happened, right? Yeah. Was that like Don Gant was not interested in this sort of beach album that Jimmy very clearly really badly wanted to do?
Yes, because it is entirely possible he went to Don Gant with the same proposal. Don Gant just said no, and so we never never got that story. Yeah, I should have looked that up. Anyway, so changes in the personnel for the album on the Coral Reefer Band. Roger Bartlett, who did tour in 76 with Jimmy, he's out on lead guitar. He only played on In the Shelter. Michael Jeffrey is in on lead guitar. Phil Fajardo, we mentioned, out on drums. Michael Gardner in. Kenneth Buttrey played congas plus drums on 3 songs. But he's not a touring drummer yet. I think he plays as a touring drummer either next year or in 2 years' time, something like that. And then we've got Billy Pewitt in on flutes and recorders for Margaritaville.
It's,
So I want to talk a little bit about string arrangements here, right?
yeah.
So before now, the producer either did them or sourced somebody to do them in studio. But this time around, Norbert Putnam did the arrangements for Changes in Latitude and Changes in Attitude and Biloxi's strings. Then Putnam brought in Michael Utley and co-arranged the strings with him for Tampico Trauma and Banana Republics.
Okay.
Now, the thing is, I think this is part of where we're seeing where Utley's musical direction, because he becomes Jimmy's quote-unquote musical director, like his consigliere for the band. If you listen to the strings on those 2 songs, I think they're more dynamic than the other 2
I would
songs.
agree
The
with
other
that.
2 songs are very like strictly Nashville soundy. The other 2 are kind of cinematic, dynamic.
I also feel like they just fit with the Coral Reefer instrumentation more on those 2 songs.
So
the other 2, it kind of feels like they're just kind of put on there.
Yeah. So I feel like this is where we're starting to see the rise of Michael Utley's influence on the musical direction of the band. Not saying he's responsible for all of it. Obviously, a lot of this is Jimmy's own influence from like exotica music and stuff. And then, of course, Michael Utley alone arranged Margaritaville's flutes and recorders. And according to the liner notes, he did it poolside in Miami. So
I believe that.
Let's see. This is a lot of
Jesus.
context. I apologize. This can take up a lot of the podcast.
It's an important album. We got to get through it.
The album's recorded in November 1976. It's released in January of 1977. It's released before any singles. There's no lead singles from the album. So the first single is Margaritaville, Back with Miss You So Badly. It's released in February of 1977. It's his biggest hit by far at this point. It hits number 8 on the Billboard, number 13 on country, number 1 easy listening.
I mean, I think that Margaritaville, it is not just his biggest hit so far. I think it is just his biggest hit, right?
I think Volcano might outchart it.
If Volcano outcharts it, I'm gonna jump into the fucking water. Like, I don't want that to happen.
Just as Jimmy wants. So the second single was Changes in Latitude, Back with Landfall. It hit number 37 on the Billboard, number 24 on the country, number 11 easy listening, so a moderate hit for him. The album itself hit number 12 on the Billboard, number 2 on the country albums. This is his biggest album so far, by far.
Yeah.
A little bit of a note on releases since Living and Dying, because I mentioned this a while back. He's been consistently releasing his albums in the winter since then. February 74 was Living and Dying, December 74 for A1A, January of 76 for Havana Daydreaming, January of 77 for Changes in Latitude, Changes in Attitude. Just as a reminder, folks, I was wondering whether winter releases add to Jimmy Buffett's success because they are such a contrast with the weather in most parts of this country when you're talking about a tropical feel.
I think this would imply so.
Yeah.
You know,
we'll see, because his next studio album is recorded or released in like August. So we'll see. But I guess now we're going to get into the songs.
Yeah. So this album, so this album opens with the title track, Changes in Latitudes, Changes in Attitudes.
This is, I posit, the very first truly insufferable Jimmy Buffett song we've come across.
So I've got 2 things I want to say about the song. Firstly, I feel like I've always wanted to like this song. I'm familiar with this album from before this podcast, listeners. And I've always wanted to like this song. And I think it's time for me to admit, as like a maturing, almost 30-year-old, that I've never liked this song. I've never actually enjoyed listening to it. It was one of the first. I know how to play a couple of Jimmy Buffett songs, and this is one of the first ones I learned how to play because I wanted to like it, and I don't. My other thing, and we're going to get into this as we progress talking about this album, I kind of think that this song and the last song on the album should be switched. I think this should be the closer. That's one of my takes for this album.
Okay, yeah, we'll get into this, I guess. I mean, my opinion is that this song shouldn't exist, but
it's pretty rough.
The thing about this song that I think drives me to dislike it the most is the fact that, I have to say, I have a soft spot for Margaritaville, even though it's overplayed. And I think all of the shit that Margaritaville gets for conjuring up the classic Jimmy Buffett look, it doesn't deserve any of it. And what truly deserves it is this song. Because this song is indicative of all that. And the other thing is that, like, this is people's first impression of the album. Because remember, the album comes out before Margaritaville is released as a single, so this is the first song they're hearing.
Yeah, so I feel like the thing about this song, right, is that like it has like a couple of individual lines that I enjoy, but the album is so like heavily couched in like what we've referred to in the past as like once as quote unquote Jimmy wisdom, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and like it really
if we couldn't laugh, we would all go insane. If we
couldn't laugh, we would all go insane. It's
the Parrothead's always quoted. Yeah.
Yeah. Just like this is a, like, if you are an adherent of that sort of Jimmy wisdom, this is an eminently quotable song, right? It's got so much of it.
Yeah.
And but it's just kind of insufferable if you aren't.
It's the exact opposite, of course, in the title with Trying to Reason with Hurricane Season. It's like, oh, it's a rhyme in the title that is centered around some sort of tropical variety. And unlike that song, which doesn't even mention this title, this is entirely based on the vibe of rhyming latitude with attitude.
It also, I feel, is like there's like a midpoint between those two, which is something so feminine about a mandolin, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, I was really high on that song. I still am. I think that song is really good, but it has like a really clumsy like core line and title.
Yeah.
And this is like, okay, now what if that song was just as bad as its title suggests it is? And it's like that song is Changes in Latitudes, Changes in Attitudes.
So I wanna bring up something here right in the very first moments of the entire album, something that's been staring everyone in the face for the longest time.
Yeah.
The intro to Changes in Latitude, Changes in Attitude, before it actually gets into the that part, before it gets to that part, it's quoting a Haitian folk song called Chokune. That's usually translated as Yellow Bird. Now, the most famous version of Yellow Bird released in the U.S. was a 1961 Calypso version by the Arthur Lyman Group. Now, Arthur Lyman was a Hawaiian marimba and vibes player. And when I say he was Hawaiian, I don't mean he was just born in Hawaii. I mean, he was actually a native Hawaiian. Of native Hawaiian ancestry. He was instrumental in bringing the faux Polynesian sound to exotica music because he met Martin Denny in 1954 and started playing in his band, which was the house band at a resort in Waikiki. Now, when you think of exotica music, two of the biggest musical impressions that it's taking from are Latin rhythms and Polynesian melodies. Martin Denny started as a classical piano player, but he tours in South America during the 1930s as part of a big band jazz ensemble. That's where Denny's introduced and gets his fascination for Latin rhythms. And of course, we have to remember, Denny is primarily a piano player. Oftentimes, the piano is used in jazz as part of the rhythm section. Think about like the most famous jazz piece, Take 5. Dave Brubeck's piano is setting up a 5/4 rhythm for Paul Desmond's saxophone to take lead. You know, it's not taking the lead itself. It's not doing the melody. Denny had been brought to Hawaii from L.A. by this Texas-born businessman named Don Beach, better known as Don the Beachcomber, who in the 1930s had opened up an establishment in LA called Don's Beachcomber, which was the first prototypical tiki bar. He had just expanded his business to Hawaii. So you see, there's a lot of things starting to overlap here with the beginning of Exotica. So Denny's got the Latin American rhythms. Arthur Lyman is a vibes guy and a Hawaiian native. He grew up doing Polynesian melodies all the time. He's transferring that to lounge music while working at these Honolulu resorts in the early 1950s. So when the two of them meet and start working together, it's really obvious how Exotica is going to form as a musical niche.
This is all sort of coalescing into like, this isn't just like a concept album in the terms of like Jimmy wants to record songs about the beach. This is like, no, Jimmy is like writing a manifesto with this album.
Yeah, pretty much. So one night, Lyman's drinking, and he started doing bird calls during the set, just because he's drunk. And it went over strangely well, and it became the major facet of what we now know as Exotica. And he ends up playing the vibes on Denny's 1957 album, Exotica, which we know Jimmy's familiar with. So, I mean, among all this, we need to recognize there's a lot of like tourism as neocolonialism in the birth of this genre that's transferring over to Jimmy, outside of just extracting the superficial elements of traditional music. We've established that it's a huge influence on Jimmy Buffett's like quote unquote Gulf and Western music, or Caribbean soul as he's been referring to it up to this point. It's just something I want us to keep in mind as we head full sail into this particular era of Jimmy Buffett's career.
Yeah.
So the thing I dislike about like the delivery in Jimmy's voice in this song is his voice is different in this song. He's doing like a very like laid back kind of lazy voice. Like it's like he's not doing, it's like he's doing like the 1970s equivalent of like that, that like stoner girl like vocal fry stuff that was big like 10 years ago or something on YouTube.
Yeah, a little bit. I kind of get
where
it.
Everyone talked like that. It's just like the 1977 version of that. I almost feel like.
Yeah, I think I can pick that up.
It's kind of grating on me.
For this song, it's just like, as we're going to get into, listeners, I had kind of a weird dual experience listening to this album this week. Where, like, as I mentioned, I spent a lot of time kind of stressed out of my mind sitting in a hospital room. And so the first couple of times I listened to this album this week, I got to admit, I really dug it, right? It really, like, it made sense to me. I just didn't have the capacity to think about it critically in the way I tend to. And when I didn't do that, so much of this album just clicked for me in ways that I really enjoyed. And then I went back and listened to it after we got my partner out of the hospital. And I was able to calm down a little bit, get some proper sleep. And what I have described is that I feel like I've gone completely insane. I feel like I listened to two different recordings of the same album.
That's because you didn't
by the
laugh.
Same musicians. I didn't what?
It's because you didn't laugh. That's why you went insane.
Yeah, that is why I went insane. But very seriously, it feels like I listened to a completely different version of this album that was exactly the same recording done by the same musicians. It's just the only difference was that I couldn't think about it too hard. Even then, I kind of have already gotten sick of Changes in Latitudes over time, like the song. But it's still like when I couldn't think about it too hard and I was like completely sleep deprived, this song was okay. And then I started thinking about it for like literally like 5 minutes. I listened to it like one more time and I was like, oh, yeah, no, I don't.
You hit upon the magic, the key to enjoying Jimmy Buffett's music is don't think about it.
I did.
This podcast was doomed from the start because we're thinking about it.
It really speaks to like how his music is meant to be enjoyed. I think that Maya mentioned it when they guested on our episode about A1A, was that like people don't listen to Jimmy's music this way. They don't critically analyze it the way we're doing that. I think we have found a lot of his music that we've gotten a lot of enjoyment out of through doing this.
Yeah, I mean, even this week, I found a song that I've been getting a lot of enjoyment out of.
Yeah, but still, I feel like we are entering, like, this is an album more so than any other in his career, I think. Maybe even more so than White Sport Coat. That is like a shifting of eras for Jimmy.
But,
right?
I mean, yes, this goes into what I say about, why I think Margaritaville doesn't deserve a lot of the blame that is put upon it, is I think the specific song here, and I think it's not just because it's the first song on this album, Changes in Latitude, Changes in Attitude, is the singular watershed moment in Jimmy's career here. This is the tipping point. That's the way I feel, because we heard what it could have been on the title track for Havana Daydreamin'. It's a very different type of song this time around.
It's very different.
We're
it's
still
a very
going to
different
see
type of album.
some vestiges of that in what I think are the more enjoyable songs on this album.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to say about this song.
Well, let's move on to a song that we've famously twice now had nothing to say about, which is Wonder Why We Ever Go Home.
Why We Ever Go Home. Yeah, so this is a re-recording of a song that Jimmy did.
This is technically the second re-recording, because originally it was Rancho Deluxe, and then he did a different version that was going to be on Havana Daydreamin' but was cut. And I think we both listened to that.
I didn't listen to the version of Havana Daydreamin'.
Okay. So this is only the second version you've heard. This is the third version for me.
Yeah, I think this version is marginally better than the version that appeared on Rancho Deluxe. I still have very little to say about this.
Well,
it's interesting exclusively because it's re-recorded music from Rancho Deluxe.
I agree with you only because I don't really think it was much of anything on Rancho Deluxe. I think it's more of a fully formed song here. But again, the only reason I remember anything about this song is because the melody is a ripoff of A Pirate Looks at 40. The other thing about this version is we need to talk about how often Fingers Taylor gets to play the harmonica here, because like the dude seems to not entirely understand there's low notes on the harp. You could use them sometimes. And it really stings because where the harp is going high on this song, I can hear it in my mind, and maybe it's part of the Rancho Deluxe version stuck in my head. There should be a steel guitar there. Doyle Grisham is gone from the band. He's not in the band anymore.
He's gone. He's not here. I didn't realize that.
There's no steel guitar.
No, there is a steel guitar on this fucking album, and it sucks. We'll get to it.
All right.
It is. There's a steel guitar part that is the intro for the song "Miss You So Badly," and it is such a whiplash, like killer moment. Like killer in like a bad way. Like I feel like I have been killed. And I hate it.
I didn't even clock that. But yeah, so
we'll get to it.
I think part of the reason that I'm not a fan of this song is that it's so very obviously trying to capture a specific emotion, and I'm not entirely certain whether it's listlessness or wanderlust or whatever. And I think every time I listen to it, it tries harder to do that, and it doesn't do that at all.
I just don't. I have nothing to say that's remotely interesting about this song.
I mean, again, we'll get down to it. I mean, this, if it had been on the last album, it would be like, it would have a record for like contender for it Ain't He a Genius Award the most times, and the most consecutive times, because it'd be 3 weeks in a row.
So I've done a little bit of reading and I've discovered there's only 3 songs, or I guess 2 songs that have 3 like recorded studio versions in Jimmy's oeuvre, right?
Yeah.
And those 2 songs, technically 3, the 2 songs are Captain and the Kid and In the Shelter.
In the Shelter. Yep.
Yeah. And then the third one would be Wonder Why We Ever Go Home, right?
Yeah.
And that is such a fucking bizarre collection of songs.
That's pretty insane.
It's pretty wild. But
it makes sense for the first 2.
Also that like 2 of those are on this album.
It makes sense, I guess, for the first 2 because they're songs from an album that sold less than 500 copies and an album that wasn't released until 5 years after it was recorded. So
yeah, but like I guess Jimmy felt like Wonder Why We Ever Go Home was like a better song than deserved to be on like a forgotten and maligned soundtrack. That's all I can think of. I don't think right. I think we should move on.
Yeah, let's move on.
Much more interesting song,
Banana Republics, which is the first cover on this album. It's written by Steve Goodman, Steve Berg, and Jim Rothermell.
Yeah, another Steve Goodman banger. I
have some information. So Steve Berg was the producer for a number of Goodman songs. So I think his credit probably comes from the production on this. I assume that Jim Rothermell's credit, because he's a studio like flute guy, comes from his flute work on the Steve Goodman version of the song. If I say flute work, people are going to be like confused because there's no flute on Jimmy Buffett's version. There is a very prominent flute part on Steve Goodman's original version of this song, and that's Jim Rothermell doing it. So I assume his credit comes from that. So it's a little weird because that part of the song, I don't think there's any instrument playing that flute like counter melody at all on this version of the song. It's just completely absent.
So folks, I broke my traditional Jimmy cover listening habits this time. When my gracious co-host Kyle realized that I was having a bad week in the hospital, he sent me the Steve Goodman version specifically so that if nothing else happened, I could at least say that I hadn't just been listening to Jimmy this week, which I really enjoyed. And I did end up listening to it, and it was really interesting, partially because I listened to that cover version after my initial, like, really enjoying this album, like, listens. And it was, like, very strange because when I first listened to this song and I didn't listen to the Steve Goodman version, I could not tell this song was supposed to be any sort of joke at all. It read to me as like wistful and 100% genuine. Like Jimmy wants to be one of those expats in the bar.
So there's a couple of lyrical changes that happen between the 2 versions. Like the big one the obvious one is that for whatever reason, Steve Goodman is just running marijuana, and Jimmy says running tons of ganja. For whatever reason, he wants to use a slang version. The other one is that early in the song, it's the expats in Steve Goodman's version, are expecting to have some fun. In Jimmy's version, they're hoping to have some fun, which puts a more positive spin. Or really, in Steve Goodman's version, I think it puts a more sinister spin on the intentions of the expats.
I agree. I feel like the thing about the Steve Goodman version is that you can tell he's like taking the piss out of the expats, right? Like these are a bunch of people who are doing some like, good old fashioned European Orientalism, right? Like they're going down to the Caribbean to play.
How familiar are you with Steve Goodman's oeuvre?
I'm not really at all.
I'm going to send you
this podcast is my first big introduction to Steve Goodman.
I'm going to send you a song by him that you are really going to like. It's called The 20th Century is Almost Over. It was co-written by him and John Prine. And it features Pete Seeger on banjo.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly up my alley. I love that stuff.
Yes.
But this song is like, I think that there's a couple of things about Jimmy's version that make it like less like immediately obvious as a joke, right? And part of it is just the way Jimmy sings it. But I think a big part of it is that this version is just a little bit slower.
Yeah.
Right? It's not that much slower, but the fact that it is slower, it gives it that wistfulness.
I think the thing, and what's weird about this when we get to the next song, is that Jimmy essentially writes his own version of this song. And he explicitly says, like, he knows, because he was interviewed about it for like a Steve Goodman book. And he was like, Steve wrote this like great version of the same song I was trying to write. And it's so much better than mine. And he puts them both on this album, and he puts them right next to each other. And the thing about Jimmy's version is it's frankly not bad. It's written from a different perspective. The biggest problem here is that every other song on the album that deals with the tropics makes you think Jimmy either is or is actually turning into, in real life, the guy that Steve's making fun of in this song.
So, like, I think we talked a little bit about it last week about, like, Jimmy is, like, a person who is, like, very interested in selling a particular image of himself, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and he's very good at it. And he's been doing it a little bit, but I feel like this is the album, especially on the next album, Son of a Sailor, are where that image of the kind of guy Jimmy is really starting to metastasize. And, like, it's starting to become something that Jimmy is really working on, right? As, like, a part of his musical career, is like selling a particular image of himself. This is so interesting, especially because like this next song, Tampico Trauma, demonstrates that like Jimmy does get the joke of Banana Republic.
Yes.
He understands the joke.
Yes. So I do have one more thing to say is that, like, to sum up my feelings on his version of Banana Republics is when Tom Waits heard the Eagles cover version of his song Old 55, Tom Waits referred to it as a little antiseptic, and that's how I feel about Jimmy's version of Banana Republic. So let's move over to Jimmy's version, because again, he does get the joke. Tampico Trauma is the absolute highlight of this album for me. I have been listening to this song nonstop. I love this song.
You know, I got to agree. There's only a couple of songs on this album that I think are like honest to God kind of good. And I think that this is very easily the best of them.
The thing about this is that it is south of the border outlaw country.
Yeah.
It's something we haven't heard we heard a little bit on the last album, I think on the title track, but it's something we haven't heard in a bit, is actual like honest to goodness outlaw country. And it actually just has a great chord progression.
Yeah, it's really fun to listen to. Like one thing about like the Coral Reapers, like that just kind of like, I feel like this must be like a couple of the key like members. I feel like Fingers might be a big part of it, honestly, is that they're really good at like this like bombastic like kind of like rock music.
Well, because
like,
they started off as like a bar band. Like they're just good at doing bar band music.
Yeah, and this is 100% that, and it sounds great.
The problem is when they start doing tiki bar music.
Yeah, we'll get into it eventually. But yeah, this is like really interesting. Another thing about this song that I think is really interesting is that on our last episode, I talked a lot about, on the title track of Anna Daydreamin', which is the song I still love, sort of about this particular notion of like running to the Caribbean, which is a more lawless place.
Yeah.
You know?
He turns that on its head here.
Yeah, it makes it clear that Jimmy is aware of that like more criminal or lawless perception of Latin America, and is also aware that that's not a an indicative reality.
Oh yeah,
right?
because the whole point is like he's talking about like, well, the federales, they say they'll be your friend, but they're going to turn on you. But as you go through the song and they finally do change their opinion on him, you realize they're well within their rights to, because he's causing a lot of fucking trouble.
No, it's like really fun. I really like the progression from they tell you that they want to be your friends to if you come back, we may not be your friends.
Yeah.
This notion of the federales who just grin, I really connect with it because that is how I talk to people when I am completely fucking livid with them. Like I just like big grin. Hi.
That's a good point. I read that as almost more like the narrator looking at it as some sort of like third world corruption in the local law enforcement thing. But I think your interpretation works just as well there.
Like the second like conversation that he has with the federales, quote unquote, where they come in and they're like, "Hey, we don't want to see you back here," right?
Yeah.
It's like you can kind of tell that, like, you know, they still have the grins on their face, right? They're talking in like kind of the same cadence. It's just the words they're saying are much more like, you need to leave.
Yeah.
And like I really like this song.
Yeah, because again, there's characters in this song between the narrator and the federales. And Jimmy does totally fine character work. There's actually not a lot of character work on this album now that I think about it.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it either, but there really isn't very much. It's kind of like he's doing a lot of mood pieces, which is like, you know, he's done good mood pieces in the past. But I feel like he should be doing more character work.
Yeah,
I think that he's better at that.
Yeah, absolute highlight for me on this album. Potentially right up there with They Don't Dance Like Carmen No More. Potentially my favorite like original Jimmy Buffett piece.
Really?
Yeah, I really like
good.
It. Shall we move on to a
Lovely Cruise?
Lovely Cruise.
This is the second of 3 covers on this album. This one is by a gentleman named Jonathan Bayham. I don't know him.
I don't think anyone does. His only credit on Discogs is for writing this song. There was some discussion on Buffett News about it. Somebody who said one of his favorite classic Buffett songs is Lovely Cruise, and I can't imagine anyone actually having that opinion, but I guess someone did. And essentially what the general consensus was is that he was a small-time singer-songwriter who never made it big, and he probably knew Jimmy from his Nashville days. And he wrote that song, and Jimmy was like, "Cool, can I record it?" And he was like, "Sure." And that's the story.
That seems like a likely story, to be honest.
There's some really actually nice jazzy soul-inspired like electric piano. After the So Let's Cruise and you get into like the electric piano break, it's very reminiscent of Ray Charles. And after a couple listens to this song, I did sort of realize, especially when Fingers Taylor echoes Jimmy on that one song, he's singing it like a gospel song. It's like a gospel song about sailing. And I think this I think this dovetails with your idea that Jimmy's writing a manifesto on this album.
It really feels like it. And like this is like, you know, there's also the only line on Changes in Latitudes that I honestly like really like is the part where he just goes, "God, I wish I was sailing again," you know?
Yeah.
Like that strikes me as like the most like honest line in that song. And like this is like, you know, sailing is like a big part of Jimmy's oeuvre. We talked a lot about it in on Havana Daydreaming last week about like that song is so much about like just like everything is dark and bad, but like you're on the water, so it's okay. And this is like another aspect of that, of just like yeah, it's a lovely cruise. I don't know if this song, however, I gotta say, outside of like the music, inspires a lot of reaction from me.
No,
the lyrics
not really.
don't really do anything.
Yeah, no.
No, but also it sort of starts to bring to mind we're almost, this is the last song on the A side of this album. We only have 2 songs on this side that Jimmy wrote for this album.
Yeah.
Like
yeah, and one of them is one that he had already decided was like inferior to one of the covers. Although I don't think it is. I think it's very strong in its own way.
I think it's strong. I think I'm honestly more likely to listen to Tampico Trauma than I am to listen to Steve Goodman's version of Banana Republics on a given day.
Well, it's a good rocker, is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. But that's like an interesting aspect of like Jimmy's writing a concept album here, and I guess that like including covers is not like anti-conceptual, but
Yeah.
it is like a weird choice.
Yeah,
It
so
is a little odd.
he's got 10 songs on the album. He wants to do a concept album. He does 3 covers, 2 songs he'd already recorded and released on previous albums, and another song that he said was an inferior version of the song that he was covering.
Also, one of the songs on the B-side is co-written by Fingers.
Yes, that's true. And Margaritaville was written in 6 minutes, as he said. I think it's time to flip the record.
I think it is.
All right, side B.
It's time to talk about the big one.
Yeah, it's the quintessential Jimmy Buffett song, Margaritaville.
So I have a lot to say about Margaritaville, but I want to hear what you have to say first, because I think that, like, generally speaking, you're a lot lower on Margaritaville than I am.
No, I'm quite positive at Margaritaville. I genuinely, I actually don't have much to say because, again, after listening through the album a couple times, I've come to realize that everything that I dislike about the image that Margaritaville set is not really, Margaritaville doesn't deserve it. We talked about it a lot on Changes in Latitude.
All the venom that one has for Margaritaville really should be reserved for Changing Latitudes. Attitude.
But because largely, like, the lyrics aren't happy in this song. No. It's not a happy song. It describes a day that starts boring while you're just drinking the day away, and then it turns into some bad luck, like, cutting your heel, blackout drunk, and getting a tattoo you don't remember, losing the soul for your margarita, whatever the fuck. But, like, this song is at its heart like painting a very depressing portrait of somebody not just wasting the day away, but they're wasting their life away.
So here's what I want to bring up about this song.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're in the middle of the thought.
No, I mean, really, that's just it. I don't actually have much to say about this song, except, like, it's overplayed, but frankly, I do think it's a strong song, and I think it takes a lot of the blame for Jimmy's later image.
I have a lot of thoughts about that, but here's my first question. Do you think the subject of Margaritaville is comfortable? Do you think he's trying to be comfortable?
Oh, do I think he's trying to be comfortable? I do think he's trying
those are two different questions. Do you think he's trying to be, and do you think he is?
I don't think he is, and I do think he's trying to be. Said, it's depressing and, like, desperate, right?
Yeah.
And Jimmy writes a lot about desperation, mostly like in Tin Cup Chalice, like being desperate to be by the sea. This is a different type of desperation.
I agree. So what this song strikes me as is that, like, first of all, this is a really important song to talk about because there are very few artists who are as prolific and popular as Jimmy, whose entire lives are as defined by one song as Jimmy is. And that's this song, right?
Yeah.
Like, his life and career is defined by Margaritaville to a truly, like, kind of shocking degree, to the point where, like, if all you knew was, like, how much one song impacted an artist's life, I feel like you could be forgiven for thinking about Jimmy as a one-hit wonder. He's definitely not, right? He has a ton of hits, but this is the big one that colors the rest of his life.
I mean, unless you're a country guy, who was listening to him in the early 70s, you'd be forgiven for thinking he was a one-hit wonder because you probably wouldn't necessarily know Come Monday.
I think I would agree with you on the notion that, like, this song is, like, the figure is not comfortable, but he is trying to be, right? Comfort is, like, a sort of, like, load-bearing concept in Jimmy's music, right? We've talked a lot about, like, his ability to sort of use exotic instrumentation to evoke the tropics and evoke, like, warmth. And this song is, like, a little bit about that, right? Even something I found that I think is really interesting is that even a lot of the songs that I don't like very much in Jimmy's music to this point have been listenable. Like, there's only really been a couple of terrible, like, real stinkers that I don't want to hear anymore.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting to me, that, like, you have this notion of, like, all this music that is comfortable but not necessarily, like, good. The figure in this song, right? He is not comfortable, right? He is fled to the Caribbean. He's getting blackout drunk for, he says stayed there all season. brings to my mind that like this isn't just like a day, that he has been in the Caribbean getting blackout drunk for months.
Yeah, it's
right?
habitual.
It's habitual, right? Like truly, like he is wasting away in Margaritaville, right? But like in his mind, wasting away in Margaritaville is a more comfortable place for that figure to be than it would be to admit that he is definitely the problem in his relationship, right? Like a realization he only comes to at the apex of the song.
Right.
And that's really interesting to me, especially because something that we're going to get into a lot in this podcast is that Jimmy's relationship to this song changes a lot over time. It's the big hit. It's like, he names the restaurant chain after it. Over time, Margaritaville stops being the place where you waste away and starts being a place that's kind of cool to go to, actually.
Yeah, it becomes like weirdly anthemic and positive for
you're not escaping from Margaritaville. You're escaping to Margaritaville.
And the thing about it is, I don't know whether Jimmy had to do that for, partly for like his own mental health, because the issue with artists that have like one song so heavily associated with them, the one that comes to mind is Billy Joel with Piano Man, is that eventually you get tired of playing it and everyone wants to hear it at every concert, right? And so eventually what you do is you either do the Billy Joel thing and you play it, but you make the audience sing it because they're the ones who really want to hear it anyway. Like, you're tired of it. And, that's an autobiographical song for Billy Joel. I'm sure it conjures up some rough memories of his first wife, who's mentioned in the song, and what life was like when he was actually trying to scrounge to make a living. Or you do the other thing, like with, say, like Bob Dylan, and you just do whatever the fuck you want on stage, never say anything to the audience, make your songs completely unintelligible, do new arrangements of everything, constantly change the words, and never play any of your hits.
And Jimmy has definitely chosen one of those.
Jimmy's in between, because not only is he's playing all of his hits, obviously. There's the big eight. Margaritaville is one of those, maybe the biggest of the eight. And he plays those at pretty much every concert, and he's always singing it.
Yeah, it's an interesting song, right? And I think that, like, as Jimmy's relationship to Margaritaville changes, which we're going to hear mostly through live recordings, I think, in the later sort of months of this podcast, I do kind of suspect that I will come to resent this song,
Yeah.
This isn't, like, supposed to be, like, a deep, sad song. It's just kind of supposed to be a song about a guy who thinks he's comfortable and isn't.
Yeah. And it's one of those, it's a character song.
Yeah, it's a character song. And it's like, honestly, like, I think the song is genius. Like, I really like it. It's like, I don't know if I want to listen to it a lot of times. I think the only thing I honestly loathe on this song is the fucking flute and recorder parts. I really don't like them.
So I don't mind those, actually.
I don't like listening to them. But, like, I don't think it's, like, terrible. I think the song is really good. I do kind of wonder if, like, as Margaritaville in, like, sort of Buffett canon stops being that place where you go to waste away and starts being that cool, hip, and happening place where you go when you just need to relax, man.
Well, I think I think it has to in order to survive.
I think it does, and I think that I think that there's a price to be paid for that, which is that I think I'll like the song a lot less.
Yeah, we're going to hear a pretty early version of it, because his first live album comes out in 1978, so a year after this.
You had to be there, right?
Yeah, you had to be there. And then I'm just guessing we're going to hear it on every single other live album as well.
We're going to be talking a lot about Margaritaville. There's a lot of
imagine we won't.
About this. I have to imagine that we're going to be talking about Margaritaville for the rest of this podcast, up until including, like, our final retrospective episode. But, like, I don't know. It's a good song for now. I don't hate it yet. I suspect I will.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it.
I do have another major problem with the song on this album, actually, which is that positionally, I think it's fine to open side B with Margaritaville. I think it's one of the better songs in the album. I think that makes sense.
Well, yes.
What it goes into,
I think you're right.
Jimmy's got some sequencing problems. Yeah, he's got some problems.
This is just a like, if you go and say, hey, I want to do a laid back concept album about life on the beach, let's do this song about a girl's suicide.
Folks,
Why?
some of you deeper cut Jimmy Buffett fans might have been a little angry with us for a recording of High Cumberland Jubilee, in which we were very shocked about In the Shelter being on that, because we were like, this is a really dark song. I'm kind of surprised Jimmy recorded a song like this.
Yeah.
Because it's on his biggest album, arguably. All I have to say is, like, can you really blame me for not recognizing it? Like,
yeah. Okay, so a little bit of context of this. We have to remember, High Cumberland Jubilee is released in 1976. This is his first album he does after the release. I believe he records this after the album is finally released.
I had a hard time tracking down like the specific date in which High Cumberland Jubilee actually got out there.
Discogs is pretty good with that when you look at a couple of pressings. I think I saw a pressing that said August of 1976.
That would put it before this album was recorded, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this album was recorded in November 1976. I think it's more likely that it came out before rather than after, if it's that late in the year recording.
So
he definitely recontextualizes this song because the song is so fucking different.
I think this is I think this version of the song,
it's a tragedy.
We talked a little, yeah.
Not only in lyrical contents.
like we talked a little bit about how like we were kind of surprised about the song the first time. And like, I think I referred to it as ill-conceived, and I don't think it was ill-conceived. I think this version of the song is very ill-conceived.
I will say the thing about this version of the song is the vocals, again, they're very relaxed for the subject matter, right?
Yeah.
And so I had gone back and listened to the original version of the song to compare and contrast.
Yeah.
And it's done in normal like Nashville sound balladeer stuff. And the thing about the song is it is a tragedy. It's an emotional one, and I think it works with that style.
Yeah, it does.
Like as a traditional country song, it works much better than whatever's happening here.
Yeah.
I don't think we should spend much more time on this.
This is very ill-conceived. It's like a real problem. I just want to say that, like, this is a little spoiler for Steel Drum Watch, folks. This version of the song has a lot of exotic instrumentation on it. A lot of bongos.
Yeah.
I think there's a vibraphone on it.
Interesting.
I think Jimmy would have had the good sense, or probably more accurately, Don Gant would have had the good sense on just the last album to stop him from putting that stuff on this song.
Who knew that Don Gant was going to be a hero in all of this that we missed?
I do miss him.
All right. Let's move on to, I think, what is a new facet of Jimmy Buffett's music in Miss You So Badly is, I guess now we're getting like a requisite touring song on every album.
So really quick, I just want to say, going from like this kind of weird version of In the Shelter to like I think it's a steel guitar. Literally, like the first time that happened, the first couple of times I listened to this album, folks, it's like I didn't recognize I was listening to In the Shelter. And then when I had my first like critical listen to the album and I realized that was happening, I felt completely dumbstruck. And then that intro hit for this song that follows it, and I was literally just like, I turned the album off. Like, I can't deal with this right this second, Jimmy.
Yeah, it's
a lot.
It's really strange to go from that song to this song. It's a co-write with Fingers Taylor. It's obviously about them touring. And
yeah,
the organ is doing like this reggae thing in the chorus too.
Yeah, I don't really hate the song, and I kind of like the chorus of it.
Yeah,
you know, like I like the like gone, gone, gone. Like that section is kind of like I kind of like it, but it's also like, oh my gosh, like a big part of it is just that like following that unfortunate version of In the Shelter does this song zero favors.
Yeah, this song was mostly a forgettable song for me. All I really clocked was the organ in the chorus, and just the fact that like I think it's now going to be a thing that every album we're going to get one song about the touring live.
Well, we'll see how long that goes on. I think I'm interested to see, but like I agree. I also just think that like this album is positioned. The song is positioned in this album to occur at like the single moment where I am most poised to be venomous against Jimmy. This is a really unfortunate placement for it.
Yeah, I mean,
oh my god,
I don't know what other song you would put shelter in the shelter. Because again, I think it's a matter of why would you put in the shelter on this album?
Yeah, I think the
Why would
correct
you do
answer is
that?
not to put in the shelter on this album. It's a problem with this album structure for sure.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to say about this.
Yeah, me neither. It's just unfortunate. That's
right.
really all there is to say.
Well, I guess we're going to move on to, frankly, another song I don't have much to say about. I think the song that might win the Ain't He a Genius award this week for me, which is the last cover, Jesse Winchester's Biloxi. So I have to say, the reason this is an Ain't He a Genius award for me is like, we get to, 3 minutes in the song and I'm like, oh, well, that was a forgettable little song. And then 3 more minutes of the song happen.
Yeah, it's so long, and it's like I feel
Jesse
like
Winchester's version is 3 minutes and 20 seconds. This version is 5 minutes and 40 seconds.
I feel like it's really notable that like we're 0 for 2 on Jimmy covering Jesse Winchester, because he did Define Gravity on Havana Daydreamin', and that was like the most forgettable song on that record for me. Like,
yeah. And on Jesse's version, again, it's more interesting. Like, there's some interesting, like, piano and guitar interplay on his version, so it's a little engaging. This is just... And also, like I said, it's more than 2 minutes shorter than Jimmy's version. This is just so slow and boring.
Yeah, I don't care much for this version of Biloxi. I don't have a lot to say about it.
You think AHAG award for this?
Maybe. The other one for me that could have that is Lovely Cruise, but I think Lovely Cruise is more interesting.
It's between those two. And they're both covers, so I guess good for Jimmy for not writing an unforgettable... Well, I mean, again, Wonder Why We Ever Go Home would be, but it's already, like, won before. It's...
This album is, like, really quick. I think it's time we move on to the closer. And I want to say, I feel like Landfall as the album closer is really indicative of a lot of this album, where... Here's the thing. We talked a lot about how Havana Daydreamin' was like very consistent. Just like a solid showing of like 7 and 8 out of 10 songs. I feel.
Yeah.
This album is much more a solid showing of like 4 to 5 out of 10 songs.
If that.
And I think that Landfall,
it's
I think that
very
Landfall kind of encompasses that.
Yes.
It's not even that it's inconsistent. It's consistently just the kind of boring and dull. If even boring and dull.
The album in total or the song?
The album in total.
Okay. Because I like
Landfall
the song.
specifically. I think the Landfall specifically isn't that bad. I don't think. I think I would put it on like a 5. I don't think it's that. I don't think it's like great, but I don't hate listening to it. Like I hate listening to a lot of the songs on this album.
Yeah, I would say this is definitely in the top half of songs on the album, and that's saying something. Because
it's not like this is a great song. I'm not
huge on. I like the Sail Away part.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the strongest part of the song.
Yeah. It's like I guess I'm partial to like the hard rockers on this song, because this one and Tampico Trauma are the only ones that really go hard.
Yeah, I agree with that. It really feels like when Jimmy goes slow on this album, it really doesn't work, which is weird because like on other records that Jimmy has recorded, like going slow is really when he gets across like being on that beat. Like I think about like, like Tin Cup Chalice, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a slow song, but it's also like it really gets across like that sort of like desperate need to be on the beach.
It's very contemplative is what it is. This song is not contemplative, it's just fun.
No, I think it's fascinating that Jimmy couldn't write a song like that for this album, but I think that this song is like pretty fun. I don't hate listening to it. I would listen to it much like. It's probably there's only 3 songs on this album that I would want to listen to again, and it really is just like Tampico Trauma, Landfall, and Margaritaville. And Margaritaville is pushing it.
Yep, that's my top 3 too. This album is dire, folks. I think it's going to get worse.
Landfall is like, when I couldn't think too hard about the album, Landfall was like really fun. And when I thought about it more, I was like, oh, okay, it's not great.
Yeah.
But it's still fun to listen to, I guess.
I guess I have to say, I think this might be a weird one where Jimmy has... In fact, no, I'm not going to say... I was going to say, I think it's a weird one where Jimmy might have a stronger A-side, but I could not tell you. I could not begin to describe either side of this album as strong. So I'm not even going to make that distinction.
There's 10 songs on this? 9, and
There's
there's
10
10,
songs.
and fully a third of the album is like good or listenable. Like, well, as I talked about in Margaritaville, the whole album is like listenable, but so much of it just fades from memory or is like actively kind of just like not great. It's really like fascinating that like this is the album that people are like, this is the big classic.
Yeah, this
because
this is easily the most inconsistent, and I would say, like, if you gave every song, a ranking 1 to 10, I think this would probably have the lowest average number for all
I
songs
think
on an
this is
album.
I think this is a weaker album than High Cumberland Jubilee. Like,
Yeah.
which is like saying something because like even though like I was higher on High Cumberland Jubilee than you were, I still think it's worse than all the other albums we've listened to, save Rancher Deluxe.
Well, you have to think, what was our strongest? Was it Death Valley Lives on that song, on that album?
I think it was.
I would
really
listen
like
to
Death Valley Lives.
I would listen to Death Valley Lives more than any song on this album except Tampico Trauma.
Tampico Trauma is like, it's really weird. It's like Jimmy, like, and I think it's interesting because like obviously Tampico Trauma is not really a direction Jimmy spends a lot of time going in for like the rest of his career, which is a shame because it's a direction he's really good at.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, no, this album is like, there's not really a lot of character pieces. There's not a lot of like these scenes, like these stories that he's good at. Like the only other song that does that is In the Shelter. And it's like, this recording of it is so dire.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, folks. Here's my official review of Changes in Latitudes, Changes in Attitudes. I miss Don Gant. That's
and Doyle Grisham. And Doyle Grisham. Don't forget.
Oh my
Doyle
God,
Grisham.
Doyle Grisham. Ah, Doyle, my boy. They got him. They fucking Jimmy out back the woodshed.
They massacred.
They got my boy, and they had somebody else do that nightmare steel guitar on opening on Miss You So Badly.
My impression of this album is, I am so glad I am done listening to it. I cannot believe I have more Jimmy Buffett to listen to because I know it's going to drag worse than this.
Yeah, like
it's the beginning of the end, folks, and it's still January for us.
Let's get the steel drum watch out of the way really quick.
All right.
He went Jimmy, looking for steel drums bothering him so. Well, steel drum killed his lady, left him with only one question. Which way do I steer for my steel drums?
This album is absolutely chock filled with exotic instrumentation. Like it's pretty clear that like as we established, it feels like Don Gant was really like a limiting force on Jimmy. Like that was the weights, right? And he took off the weights, and now the music sucks.
Yeah.
This is not totally fair. There's a lot of songs on this that I think are fine. And like as we established, like Jimmy's not terrible at implementing exotic instrumentation into like good music. He does it on several songs on this album. I really do think that like Don Gant had the sense of mind to be like, you can't have that on every song. And he probably would have been like, hey Jimmy, you can't have congas on In the Shelter. That's not gonna work, man.
Yeah.
It's gonna sound like shit, dude.
Yeah, I used to respect Norbert Putnam because I thought he was a great studio musician, but you know what? You've soured on me, Norb.
Yeah, no, significantly, because like for not like really like somebody should have pulled Jimmy aside and had a frank conversation about like, hey, listen, the rest of the album, whatever, don't put it on this song, man. Don't put it on this song. All I have to say otherwise is that this album.
Yeah, you really fucked everybody over letting him do what he did In the Shelter.
Yeah, this album's covered in congas and marimbas and vibes. We are for now still spared the honest to God steel drum. It's not here yet.
It'll be here. It'll be here. We
here.
are in the home stretch before it appears.
Yeah, how are the boat drinks looking on this album, Kyle?
Boat drinks. I think I got boat drink fever. Beatrice, I drank 6 more boat drinks. 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 Somebody sound the alarm.
Let me tell you what, it's starting to look dire on boat drinks here.
Oh no.
So we've plateaued since essentially Living and Dying as the preeminent whiskey album he did. We've plateaued on whiskey. We've only had 1 whiskey mention since then. That continued here. We're still at 5 whiskeys total. Our boat drinks, let me run down. In Changes in Latitude, Changes in Attitude, we have a mention of red wine. usual. We usually get a wine mention or two per album.
Yeah, I think about Paris when I'm high on red wine.
Yep. And then, of course, we get our first mention of rum on that song. Very
Ran into a
Caribbean.
chum with a bottle of rum, yeah.
Very Caribbean. On Banana Republics, and I can't pin this one on Jimmy. It's on Steve Goodman for mentioning rum here. So that's two mentions of rum. We've doubled the rum.
I honestly really like that line on Banana Republics, though.
Yeah, but that's because Steve Goodman's a really good songwriter. So when we get to Margaritaville, look, I'll be honest, folks, I'm breaking a rule here. Margaritas are not mentioned by name, but I'm counting it here because, I refused previously to mention drinks that are only alluded to instead of specifically name-checked. And the margaritas never actually named the song, but there is booze in the blender that soon will make that frozen concoction. So, come the fuck on. It's Margaritaville. It's a fucking margarita. So we got a margarita. On Miss You So Badly, we're back into normal territory here. Miss You So Badly mentions Tuborg beer. And on Landfall mentions, I think I'm pronouncing this correctly, Poilly Foussé, which is a burgundy, a wine. Mm-hmm. So a running total, wine and beer still reigning supreme, which apart from the whiskey album of Living and Dying, they've always been top dog in his white sport coat and forward period. Wine at 10 mentions, beer at 9 mentions, whiskey at 5 mentions, and this is gonna hurt, folks, but in total, all of the tropical beverages, I would say, tequila 2 mentions, rum 2 mentions, 2 cocktails, that's 1 Bloody Mary and 1 margarita. In total, that's 6 tropical drinks, outpaced whiskey now. And
Whiskey's
then one gin and 1 scotch mention.
Get whiskey out of here. Whiskey's over.
I mean, if we want to be charitable, we would add in the scotch to the whiskey, and we'd say tropical drinks to whiskey. They're tied at 6.
Yeah, but we also know the direction this trend is going.
No spoilers, folks. But I've already checked the boat drinks for the next album, and it is not looking good. It is not looking good. But folks. We have a bit of a reprieve. Oh, what do you have to say?
We have a bit of a reprieve?
What do you have to say?
What's our reprieve?
I was just telling them what the next album was.
Oh, well, actually, I looked up, I found one contemporary review for this album. I didn't have a lot of time to research this week, but I found the review from Rolling Stone, which was by Ira Meyer.
Okay.
Now, this album is interesting. We've established that, a lot of people seem to, it's kind of a critical darling among Jimmy's oeuvre, which is very strange to us for a number of reasons.
Especially after I listened to it.
But I think that Rolling Stone's Ira Meyer sees through the noise. They gave the album a 3 out of 5 review, and I'd like to read the first paragraph of that album. Quote, the wry humor and carefully etched scenes that made Jimmy Buffett's A White Sport Coat and Pink Crustacean so endearing have been slowly evaporating. What remains 3 albums later are the occasional clever line and a lot of self-pitying drinking songs. The only notable exception is the desperately sad In the Shelter, the tale of a very lost young woman. So this is a person who's I think sees through the noise that this is not really the great album. I think we're a little bit
it sounds like Ira's been doing something similar to he's been following Jimmy for a bit.
It sounds like it. I'm gonna have to go back and see when I haven't recorded. We haven't recorded this yet, but I want to do a critical catch up episode.
So what I want to know is whether he had, if we have any way of knowing whether he had heard, since he singled out In the Shelter, whether he had heard the High Cumberland Jubilee album yet.
I'm gonna seek that out. I learned that Seattle Public Library has Rolling Stone's back catalog for a very long time. I'm gonna try to see if I can find that stuff.
Very good.
Yeah, and then the other thing was that review that Ira Meyer wrote ended by saying Jerry Jeff Walker will play them all under the table any night, which I think is a more or less accurate opinion. This album is not great. I don't think it's Jimmy's best. I don't think it's even really close. I'm a little bit surprised that so many people love it so dearly, and because of how big of a smash hit it was, and Margaritaville specifically was, this is a direction that Jimmy is going to keep chasing for more or less the rest of his career. We talked a little bit on the end of the last episode that we've seen what those great songwriters of years past saw in Jimmy. Some of that is still around. He's not really using those chops much these days. It's looking grim, folks.
No, but we have a reprieve next week, everybody, because we're going to have one more last hurrah of the pre-Margaritaville Jimmy Buffett, because we're doing our first compilation album. which is the essentially only released in Australia and New Zealand, The Very Best of Jimmy Buffett from 1977. It comes out after Changes in Latitude, Changes in Attitude. It doesn't feature any songs from it, only his very best through Havana Daydreaming. So we're going to be talking about that next week.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting
to see what the
time
mix
to say goodbye.
Is. Yeah. And to see how it's going to change when it gets to be, the Big One songs by heart in 1985 and a number of other compilation albums afterwards.
Certainly.
It'll be interesting to see how many of those stay and which ones they get replaced by, and whether we think anything else should have made the cut from this era of Jimmy.
Yeah.
So
it's
you have that to look forward to, folks, for next week, and then we'll be back full sail into Son of a Sailor.
Yeah, folks. We did this podcast to identify the eras of Jimmy, and we're less than 10 years into his career. And we're already 3 in. And we're gonna be in this one for a while.
Yep.
Folks, truly we are wasting away, and it's only January.
And with that, until next week, everybody, I've been Kyle.
I've been Tom.
And we'll see you next time. Disc Choreography, Wasting Away 2026. Take it away, Jimmy.
Wasting away again, away again. Wasting away again, away again. And Margarita the Bill. It's my own damn fault.